Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us here at the Starting Point Inc. of New Jersey. That we are in Haddon Township today, and we have the privilege of talking to Anna Marie Hrivnak and Ken Goldberg, both private practitioners here on site, and we are talking about intimacy in long-term relationships. This is part 3. For those who have missed the first 2 parts, let me just say that Anna Marie is a practitioner that focuses on the integration of mind, body, and spirit. And Ken Goldberg is a psychologist, who has been with us for quite a while, and he has 46 years of experiences and focuses on pathology using psychoeducational techniques. His philosophy is profoundly defined by a deep respect for the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. So with that in mind, I am Loretta Depka Zerbo, the Executive Director at the Starting Point, and it is my privilege to kick off part 3. Thank you. So guys, we are here for the 3rd time talking about intimate relationships and intimacy in long-term relationships. I think we might as well just jump right into the topic of restarting, and the question that always comes to mind is, in every relationship, does sex slow down at the age of, is it age related? Is it life related? When does it slow down, and why? Anna Marie, you want to jump in there?
I can. I think it has so much to do with outside influences. I've seen a lot of younger couples have to stop have to stop sex because they've just had a baby and they're not necessary. So sometimes gentlemen look at their wives as the Madonna effect. All of a sudden, they might find themselves not wanting to have sex with a woman that just had their child. And I just happen to be working with someone that's doing that. And for the woman, sometimes she's not ready to start to have sex. So restarting having sexual intimacy with one another after that type of a stopping is one in particular thing. But then there are other ones, and Ken, I think, can speak to this about, the senior sex. Why do you slow down if in fact you do slow down? Ken?
Well, obviously there's certain situations where people stop temporarily having sex for health or whatever reasons. I'm not exactly sure that any of those influences really has to cause your sex life to slow down. Yes, you may stop for, whatever period of time for medical reasons or whatever. But I think we let these outside influences stop things rather than that they intrinsically stop things. Now, as far as aging is concerned, I think our desires change. I think men probably have more of a drop off in sexual desire as they get older. I think women probably have more of a tendency to sustain that desire if they don't have bad experiences. If you have bad experiences, I think then people start to withdraw and they say, I just don't want it anymore. But I think from a biological point of view, I think men are more likely to experience less desire. But then I think the other thing is people get overly hung up on desire rather than outcome. If your decision is completely desire driven, then you're going to be struggling to figure out not only what you want, but do you both want it at the same time? But if you focus more on outcome and you realize, so maybe you got physical with each other, and you may not have had that much desire to begin with, but the outcome feels really good. You made love together, and it's not like either of you really wanted to or strongly wanted to, but you found a way to to get together, and then you feel good. So I don't know if I'm fully answering the question, but those were just some thoughts I had to what you said.
Yeah, I think it's important to look at least for some of the people that might be listening to this, like, why do you stop, and how long is the duration of stopping, which then affects the restart again.
Yes, and
So
some people have stopped for years, and
Yeah,
that's a whole different story
exactly.
than if people hit a temporary period of time for whatever reason.
Exactly, which is the example I gave initially. That's a temporary, most of the time, it's a temporary stopping. And restarting is a little bit more casual. But for some women during menopause, medically, some of them have a lot of gynecological reasons that they don't want to have sex. Pain, there are so many different variables. And so sex might stop. And then when do you start it up again? Is there fear to start up again? Things along that line. So it's a heavy question. It really is. And again, what stopped it? And then what do you do to restart?
Well, and I think, as you say, for women, pain, vaginal dryness, some various physiological issues, and for men, issues of erectile dysfunction or even ejaculatory problems, that these are physiological things that happen with aging. And they happen, they may take different forms with men and women, but they are physical, they are realities. And then the question is, do these realities cause you to cease sexual relations, or do they cause you to redefine them and reimagine them? Are you going to stop having sex because a man has an erectile dysfunction, because a woman has vaginal dryness or pain? Are you going to stop it, or are you going to then say, well, let's reimagine, what is it going to look like given this is the reality? What are the options to correct those issues? Because there are options that will correct pain, correct dryness, correct erectile dysfunction. There are ways to correct those. Or how will you reimagine the way you'll have sex, given that maybe you're not correcting these? But does it mean you have to withdraw from each other, or do you reimagine how you're going to re-engage with each other?
And when you have withdrawn, how do you have that conversation we talk so much about communication. How do you restart the conversation around sex when in fact maybe you've suffered through a dry spell and it matters to one and not the other? It's sort of unspoken, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Well, and if there's been a dry spell, as you say, and you're talking about not just a couple of weeks, a month, whatever, you're talking about 3, 4, 5, 10 years, which I run into in my practice. Once you hit a protracted dry spell, you're back to the issue of a decision. I think before you can even find a solution, you really have to decide, what do you decide to do as a couple? You once, years back, made a decision to be sexual with each other, to get married, or to live together, or however you defined it. And now it's been a long time since you've had sex, and at least one or the other of you is bringing up the issue. So so the discussion really gets down to, we have to make a decision. Obviously nobody should do anything they don't want to do, but if you're in a relationship and one person is adamant against having sex and the other one wants this, well, unless that other person makes a decision, you really have to go back to the drawing boards and figure out what you want to do. And what you find is people, I mean, they're together and many times they want to be together. So the question is, well, you know, figure that out. Are you going to decide as a couple, it's not like you mean now tonight we're just going to jump into bed, but are you going to make a decision that this is our goal, that we're going to resume being a sexual couple, and then how do you do it? And can you get help from somebody? I mean, I've met with people, tried to help them navigate that, but you have to make a decision, decide what you want to do.
All right, and I agree with that 100%. And I think the dialogue really has to focus on, if there has been a long period of time that the two of you have not been sexually intimate, what does that starting over mean? Does it mean intercourse, or does it mean, as Ken said a minute ago, to redefine what that sexual intimacy might look like? And is there going to be a satisfaction for one partner over another? And it might be, as I mentioned at the end of the other podcast, a giving and receiving. And that's a very, very important part of that dialogue. You might not be able to receive exactly what you want at or desire during one time of intimacy, but you might be able to get it the next time. It's a very, very, I say, important, respectful conversation that needs to go on. And like I mentioned before, vocabulary, I think, is a very important part of our communication. So respecting the other person's desire, or even their thought process of what could be as you're restarting, is very, very important.
Well, even to go even further with what you're saying, Henry, what you're saying is actually related to something that I tell couples. I mean, if they've made the joint decision that they want to resume sex in some way or another, I tell people to consider having his and her days, and in terms of giving and receiving, and to, as opposed to assuming you're just going to jump back into what you did before, to begin to relearn each other's bodies, moods, interests, to relearn what people like, and to I say to people to take once a week. There's the his day and there's the her day, and on the his day, what would he like to do that you're willing to do? Nothing you're unwilling to do, but what among the things you're willing to do can you explore his body? Can you relearn his body? Can you relearn what makes him feel good? Can you find ways that he will feel satisfied that are okay with you? And then the other day is her day. And what do you do to relearn what she wants, and relearn how her body reacts, and relearn what makes her feel good? And I very explicitly say that to people. I recommend, alternate his and her days and begin to relearn, who the other one is. And you may even find out that one of the reasons you withdrew is because when you thought everything was going well, you may have been just totally missing the point. I mean, in some ways, elder sex is an opportunity to have better sex, because sometimes what you do automatically bypasses really understanding what the other person likes. And if you really understand what the other person likes, you can actually have better sex later in life, even with a deteriorating body, than you can, when you're younger and you just bypass, well, okay, he or she they missed the point, but it's okay because it feels good. It can actually get better.
I would agree with you on that. I think there are many couples that I have had the pleasure to interact with. They found themselves going through a dry period because of snoring, Often they went to different bedrooms, and before you know it, a week goes into a month, and it just becomes commonplace. You might kiss in the hallway, say goodnight, and you each go to your own rooms. Okay, so that's something that I've seen quite often. And I love what Ken just said, having a her night and a his night and things like that, because you can invite the other person into your bedroom when you're sleeping in separate bedrooms. But there are many ways that things do begin in just a very casual, normal way. And before you know it, and a lot of people that have different work hours. I have quite a few individuals that I speak with, that she works night work. They're her, as she goes to the hospital, she works overnight. And so he's sleeping in the bed, and then when she comes in, she's exhausted, and he's just getting up. So even the bed itself then becomes, I don't want to say territorial, but when you come home from a 12-hour shift, you want to get in bed and go to sleep. So yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah, and I would
There's
be
a lot. So
telling
communication.
I would tell your snoring couple, don't just kiss goodnight. Go sit on the couch and make out for a little while. Give
I love
yourself just make out. Don't
it.
and then go to your separate beds.
There you go.
Do you, we bring this up about separate bedrooms because of snoring or somebody, restless legs. You can, as you get older, there's 1,000 different reasons. Is that a good idea for couples, or should it be, should the earplugs be the first try and then the, I don't know, the beds that go up and down, or, is it good for couples to really separate that way, long term?
I don't have a good answer to that. I mean, I don't, I mean, people are who they are. It seems to me that it's good to share the bed, but I can't. I'm sure there are ways to work it out if you can't share the bed. It still gets down to the commitment to not let the romance leave your relationship. It really still gets down to, are you committed as a couple, given who you are, given the stresses you face, given how you've aged, given your body, given your medication, given whatever things are impacting it, are you committed to being that special couple that love each other and love each other in emotional and physical ways?
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Okay, so is there something wrong with you if you don't desire sex more than once a month, once every 3 months? How do you counsel people that start to worry about that? Whether it be a young mother that's chasing kids, or an older couple that decides all of a sudden that once every 3 months is good for our age.
That's a loaded question.
I know, that's why I asked it.
That really is a loaded question. And again, I think
is it about the relationship, or is it about sex?
Again, you know what? I think it would depend on the viewpoint of the individual, of your partner. What are you hearing in your own head? If your partner only wants to have sex once a week, what dialogue then what self-talk do you have in your head? Are you saying, I'm not desirable? Are you saying they're working very hard? So there's a whole lot that influences that particular question.
Yeah.
But again, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I guess that when you use the word month, 3 months, I mean, it's hard to say, I mean, people are who they are, and, I support people in whatever they feel. So I wouldn't say there's anything intrinsically wrong with whatever your pattern is, but I would focus instead on the differences between people. So to give an example, if you have a person in the relationship that just really enjoys sex once a week. I say that's a normal, healthy person. There's nothing wrong with that. If you have a person feels like they want to have sex every day, I'd say, well, there's a normal, healthy person. There's nothing wrong with that. So if you think about it, if you have a couple where one person wants it every day and one person wants it once a week, that means 6 out of 7 times. That's what 83% of the time. I was trying to remember my math. That percentage of the time you're in a different place.
Right.
So are you going to allow that different place to cause you to start to get angry at each other, or are you going to sit with this reality that two healthy, normal human beings who love each other have these different patterns? So the question is not, well, who's right or who's wrong? The question is, how do you resolve that? How do you resolve it? How are you going to picture your relationship in the face of those differences?
Right. I agree with that 100%. And that's why communication in that sense is of the utmost importance. If someone only wants it once a week and the other partner doesn't go down that road of thinking I'm not desirable, so on and so forth, they want someone else in their life. If you can communicate, no, once a week is enough for me because, and whatever dialogue you have around that, I think that is of the utmost importance. However, the person that does want it more often, there has to be some type of a give and take, don't you think, Ken? There needs to be some type of flexibility in.
Well, yeah, and I focus on the issue of repertoire. This is why when we were talking, I don't know if it's in this, I think it was in the last podcast, we were talking about, do you add spice to your relationship? And I said, I believe in sexual experimentation, not necessarily to add spice, but to create a sexual menu, a certain repertoire. Because when you even said, I heard you say the word, what happens if you only want it once a week? Well, it suggests that there's one thing. And if you begin to look at your sexual repertoire and you consider the things that you both are agreeable in doing, which can involve a variety of things, that you may find that that the one person wants once a week is different from the options for the other person for those other 6 days a week. So there may be things, if it has to be the same thing, that person who doesn't want to do this every day may feel very impinged upon and really misused. But there may be other things that are very satisfying for the couple that address the person who has a more frequent desire without it being it. And I've seen this actually go both ways. I've seen men that want sexual interaction more often than women, and I've seen women that are disappointed because they want sexual interaction more often than their men. And in each case, I go back to, well, what's your repertoire? What's your menu? What are the things you can do? And I leave it open to people how explicitly they want to talk. Because some people feel comfortable being explicit, some don't. But whether it's in your mind what you can do or whether you want to talk to me about it, what are your options and what works on this day? What works on that day? And it may be different things. It may not be a solitary it that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of the dialogue. I do, because one person might feel, and again, I'll jump on the word again, it might be, they don't think of the other things on the menu as being satisfying. So the dialogue that you have with your partner is of the utmost importance. I did have one particular young couple, and it was a long period of time. They both had a different concept. And so one of the things that we came up with was meeting in the shower 3 days a week. It was just meeting in the shower 3 days a week.
So that brings us back to that word again, intimacy.
Mhm.
And can we talk about the definition of intimacy without talking about sex? Is there or is intimacy just another word for sex?
I don't know. I think there's a difference, and I hear a lot of people talking. I mean, a lot of elder couples really feel close, and they may have let their sexual relationship go, and they feel very intimate. They feel very close. They're very bonded. Yeah, I think you can feel very intimate without sexuality. I just think that people miss the point that that there may be too readily willing to accept intimacy without sexuality, without realizing that there are ways to add to their intimacy by being sexual. But no, but I think you can definitely be intimate in a sex-free relationship. I think I read a statistic not too long ago. I don't remember the exact numbers, but of couples in their 70s in successful marriages, about 50% of them continue to be sexually active, and the other 50% don't. It's more or less around that line. And I don't know how many of those, but I'm sure many of those people feel very intimate. How many of them would benefit from being more physical and sexual with each other? I don't really know, but I tend to believe some people uh, let it go when they don't really need to, and they would actually feel better if they allowed themselves to regenerate that relationship.
I agree. I think intimacy is such a special word. I do, because it encompasses in my mind such a fullness, a richness of what you can share together, not only sex, but the freedom to be able to express yourself without fearing what you are saying. To me, that's a beautiful part of intimacy. Not being afraid to say what you want to say with someone. Talk about fantasy. That's intimacy. That's intimacy. Doesn't mean you have to actually play out the fantasy, but having the allowance and that safety to be able to talk about that, to me, that's intimacy. I have to say, there is a couple that I know, and I've been in their presence numerous times, and the gentleman is a quadriplegic. And I'll find myself getting choked up as I say this. I don't think I have ever seen a more beautiful, intimate relationship between a couple that I have seen between this man and his wife. And the intimacy that they share just permeates every room that they're in, any room that they're in, the way they look at one another, the eye contact, the holding of hands. You can just see the intimacy that they share in just a touch. I mean, it just fills the room. Like I said, I love to just go and be in their presence, just to be part of what they have, that the intimacy that they share with just eye contact and touching of the hands is beautiful. So yes, I think intimacy is a very, very, very important part. And I agree with Ken. It doesn't have to be sexual.
And I don't know how well you know this couple, but for all you know, when you don't see this couple and they're by themselves in their bedroom, there may be something else that goes on between them
They certainly
that
can.
is sexual. Just because he's a quadriplegic does not mean that that sex is out of the realm. Again, I don't know the couple. And it's interesting. You don't know. You often don't know what goes on in marriages. I often think back to a time that my wife and I had 4 other couples over for a barbecue, and we were sitting, these 4 couples, and 2 of them were just lambasting each other. I mean, criticizing each other to the hilt. And then the third couple looked like they were trying to get in the act. It looked like it didn't come easily for them, but they were trying to knock each other down. And there was my wife and me and this other couple, and we were stone quiet. And it's like this whole thing is going on, and it's like it caused me to realize we get a view of bad relationships. We get a view of people arguing. We get a view of people that are angry at each other. We don't really see what happens privately. We hardly ever hear. People don't go to their friends and say, "Oh, let me tell you the story. I had a wonderful time with my husband or my wife." People hear, the criticisms. They're angry at the person. And it hit me that people just don't know what goes on privately. So again, you may know what goes on with this quadriplegic person in
Oh,
this
it's just
corner,
beautiful what you do see.
but who knows what's going on behind closed doors.
Very true.
I
Very
think
true.
that is the perfect way to end it. We don't need to know what's going on with these people unless they come to you guys for help, right?
Yes.
Thank you. I mean, I think this has been really helpful, and also defining that intimacy is not necessarily sex, but we are human beings, and sexual activity is part of life. So I thank you very much for taking the time to do these podcasts, and I'm sure we'll be back talking soon.